I've already done hundreds of fantasy football drafts, and I found that this is the best strategy when drafting from the 5th overall pick. But before we get into it, grab your coffee, grab your energy drinks. We got a white monster. Take a sip and let's jump into it. So as much as I want to draft an elite wide receiver in round 1, and I do it often from a variety of different picks, I'm going to take Breece Hall in this spot. I do also like Bijan Robinson. But Breece Hall, I mean, over 1,500 yards, 76 receptions, 9 touchdowns last year on a horrific offense with a bottom 5 offensive line. No Aaron Rodgers. He's in a completely different situation this year. He should absolutely explode. And oh yeah, last year he was coming off a torn ACL. Breece Hall is going to be a monster for fantasy this year. With our second pick, since we went running back in round 1, you have to grab a wide receiver here. I'm not a fan of going 2 running backs back to back. So with our second pick, give me Drake London. I think he's going to absolutely erupt this year. His first 2 years in the league, he's just been cursed by horrible situations. Terrible quarterback play, whether it was Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, and then awful coaching in Arthur Smith. Now that's all gone. Kirk Cousins, I think, is an underrated elite quarterback in this league. Zach Robinson, really good offensive coordinator. Raheem Morris, great head coach. They're going to feed Drake London this year. No questions. And he's one of the most talented receivers in the league. My wide receiver 2 is going to be Jaylen Waddle, who's farther down on the board. I have no problem reaching for Waddle in round 3 if it should even be considered reaching. Yes, Waddle's coming off an unfortunate year. He had some poor injury luck, bad touchdown luck. He's hit a career low 4 touchdowns. But here's what we know. Miami is still a very wide receiver friendly scheme with Mike Daniels running the ship. They're going to throw the ball a lot with Tua. And it's a very condensed passing attack with Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So bet on young, talented players to bounce back. It's an easy bet to make. It's a smart bet to make. ADP is guidance. It's not a rule. You can reach for players if you think that they deserve to be in that spot. That's how I feel about Jaylen Waddle. I need my wide receiver 2, and it's going to be him. So let's select Jaylen Waddle. This is kind of, people don't like to talk about it, but Tyreek Hill is 30 years old. What if he starts to see even a slight dip in his production? That could benefit Waddle. Now in round 4, this is where you can kind of pivot based on what you feel like you want to do. I like to target tight end here. Give me Trey McBride. Give me Mark Andrews. So since Trey McBride is available, he's my number 1 tight end this year. He's who we're clicking on. DK Metcalf is going to have a big season. If you want to go, I don't mind either going 3 wide receivers in a row, load up on that position because there's a ton of running back value later in drafts. All right, so let's click on our guy. McBride is going to be the second option in a very nice Arizona passing attack. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to help out tremendously to open up the middle of the field for McBride. MHJ is going to take a lot of defensive attention away from McBride. Kyler Murray is another year removed from the ACL injury. Both Kyler, McBride, and Marvin Harrison Jr. all 3 are going to have incredible fantasy seasons. All right, in round 5, we go and get our RB2. Sometimes I do like to wait if the guy that you wanted isn't available, but Kenneth Walker fell right into our laps, who I think is being grossly underrated. All the reports coming out of Seattle camp is that Kenneth Walker has a 3-down skill set. Ryan Grubb was just raving about him yesterday, about he's an elite pass catcher. He's an elite pass catcher. I've been kind of preaching that over the last couple of weeks. He's not a bad pass catcher. It's just Pete Carroll didn't give him those opportunities in what was a run-heavy scheme. I think we're going to look back at the end of this year and be like, how did we get Kenneth Walker in round 5? I think he's an absolute steal. I think Zach Charbonnet is a nice back, but he's going to be used more as just a give Walker a breather, insurance type of back. So give me Kenneth here, an easy pick. And this team, you guys, is looking loaded. Comment down below what you think of this team so far. Breece Hall, Drake London, Jaylen Waddle, Trey McBride, and Kenneth Walker. This team is going to win at least 10 games this year, at least. If you didn't go Kenneth Walker last round, if you decided to go another wide receiver, which is totally fine, then absolutely take Ramondre Stevenson this year, who I think is another very underrated back that has top 12 upside at the position. But for this mock draft, since we went Kenneth Walker, I love to go Joe Burrow, who I think is going to have a monster bounce back year. after just a brutal year last year. He battled that calf injury all through camp and then through the first 5 weeks of the season, and then caught absolute fire for a 5-week stretch where he threw 12 touchdown passes, 70% completion percentage. He was the quarterback 4 in fantasy points per game over that stretch. He looked like the dominant quarterback that we know. Jamar Chase was going off, and then he suffered that unfortunate wrist, forearm, ligament issue, and it canned the rest of his year. I think he's going to be completely healthy, and it just feels like it's going to be one of those years where Joe Burrow reminds us how good he is. I don't mind waiting on a quarterback here. I mean, looking at the other options, like I said, I'd probably go Ramondre Stevenson. Joe Burrow, we are taking at this spot, who I think is a tremendous value. Now we're to round 7, where you start chasing upside. You chase guys who, if everything clicks, if an injury occurs, they have top 10, top 12, top 24 upside at the position. That guy for me is Xavier Worthy. You're telling me we can get the fastest guy in the NFL with the best quarterback on the planet in round 7 when Rashee Rice could very well be suspended for 5, 6, however many games. Travis Kelce is 35 years old. I think Hollywood Brown is a pretty overrated wide receiver. Xavier Worthy could be one of those guys that wins you your weeks with his 5 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's one of those very high upside players that can blow up your team in a good way. So we're going to take Worthy here without hesitation. And now this team has a good mix of consistent players, high upside players, young players. This team is absolutely loaded. Comment down below what you think. What could I have done differently so far? And let's keep moving. All right, now in round 8, we keep going after those high upside guys that maybe we don't need them to go nuts in weeks 1 through 4. These are guys that go off down the stretch that matter the most when we need them the most in December in the fantasy playoffs. And a guy that fits that mold to a T is Jonathan Brooks for the Panthers. Yes, he's coming off a torn ACL. Yes, he's a rookie. Yes, he's going to start slow, but once he gets his opportunities, he is absolutely going to be the guy for the Panthers. He's the prototypical back. He's everything you look for in a running back. Workhorse skill set, pass down skill set, big, strong, athletic, explosive, and he has a little competition for touches with Miles Sanders, who is a pretty poor running back in my opinion. Chuba Hubbard, who isn't anything special. So once Jonathan Brooks is ready to go, he's going to be the guy for what I think is going to be an improved offense in Carolina with new head coach play caller Dave Canales. I think Bryce Young is going to be better than he was last year. They have more weapons for him with Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette. This is an underrated offense that could surprise this season. So let's click on Jonathan Brooks. In round 9, one of my favorite breakout candidates who's just absolutely going to go off the season, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, is Jackson Smith-Njigba. We draft players who had down years because of the situation that's completely changed this year. This is almost like Drake London. JSN is going to be on a much better offense with an improved offensive line, with a healthy Geno Smith, and with a pass-happy offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb, who's actually going to be able to know how to utilize him, unlike Shane Waldron, who just didn't last year. They decided to turn JSN into this low ADOT player, which if you look at his numbers when he blew up at OSU in 2021, alongside Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, he was the deep downfield threat. His ADOT was in the double digits. That is his game. That's where he thrives. Then you also take into consideration Tyler Lockett is going to be 32 years old this year. He's at the end of his career. Grubb likes to play a lot of 11 personnel, which means any way you slice it, JSN is going to be getting on the field a ton this season. I do personally think, though, that JSN is going to take over as that wide receiver 2 with Tyler Lockett really at the end of his career. So JSN is a crazy value at this spot. I think he's a league winner. He's uber talented. He has everything you want in a wide receiver. So we're going to draft him here without hesitation. If JSN is gone, I like to give you guys other options. Christian Watson is another guy. They've supposedly fixed his hamstring injuries, as one leg was a lot smaller muscle mass wise than the other, which is a huge development. So if Watson can stay healthy, Talent has never been a question. Now on an elite Packer offense with an ascending superstar in Jordan Love. We know what Watson's capable of. Yes, it's a crowded offense in Green Bay, but I just don't think it's going to matter. I think you want as many pieces of this offense as you possibly can get. So Watson is another great pick there. In round 10, I am taking Blake Corum as often as I can, just because if Kyren Williams were to get hurt, which he's proved that he's pretty injury prone over the past couple of years, Corum could come in and be a top 12, top 15 running back immediately. We know Sean McVay is kind of sketchy when it comes to running backs. He really likes one, and then he switches to another. While I don't think that will be the case if Kyren's healthy, just because of how good Kyren was last year, I think Blake Corum offers a lot of trade value. Maybe you snipe him from the Kyren Williams owner, and then halfway through the season, maybe Kyren misses a couple practices, and you can get a big name, or you can get good return from Corum, so he's a trade piece as well. And if Corum wasn't there, and if you want to go for a guy who has starting upside on his team, that's Chase Brown. I think Zach Moss is going to be irrelevant this year. I think he's going to be this year's Alexander Madison. Chase Brown has massive upside. He's an explosive back. He's a workhorse back. People don't realize that he averaged 27 carries a game at Illinois in college. He's uber athletic. He's got track speed. He's explosive. He's the more talented back. He's a pass-catching back. Chase Brown has massive upside. So part of me probably might have went Chase Brown there over Corum. It depends how your team build was. If you desperately needed an RB2, let's say you took Breece Hall and then waited, definitely take Chase Brown, who has wild upside. In round 11, we're going to continue to chase upside. I really like, you have a lot of options. You could go Jerome Ford with Nick Chubb. Who knows when Nick Chubb's going to play? You could go Xavier Legette. As I said, Carolina is going to be much better this year. I don't think Bryce Young is an amazing quarterback. I don't think he's worth the first overall pick, but I don't think he's a bad quarterback either. So you could go Legette. We're going to click on Khalil Shakir here, attached to Josh Allen in a good offense. I think Shakir could be a target monster outside of Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo. So we're going to go Shakir. All right, and then in the last round that we're going to do for you guys today, round 12, give me Rico Dowdle on Dallas. Yes, he's playing behind Zeke, but if you watched any football last year, you know that Zeke is a shell of himself. He's absolutely washed. We know Dallas is going to still be a good offense with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson. I like Rico. Yes, he's not like he's 20 years old anymore. He's been injured a lot of those years, so that you could say that's a downside because he's injury prone, or if he stays healthy, he could go bonkers behind a strong Cowboys offensive line. I think it's still pretty solid there. So we're going to go Dowdle. You could go Josh Downs, who is now banged up. Rashid Shaheed is a good option. Jaylen Wright, potentially, if you think Raheem Mostert is going to fall off a cliff. Now let's just run through some other late round targets that I like. Marshawn Lloyd is a good pick. I do think Josh Jacobs is going to be the workhorse, but if something happens to Jacobs, I like Lloyd. You could go after the Patriots wide receivers, as it sounds like they're not going to get Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, two really good options in with potentially Drake May starting week 1. I really like May as a quarterback. Dontavian Wicks, yes, crowded Packers offense, but he might be the Packers' best receiver, and we just don't know it yet. Jahan Dotson, who I've talked about before, I think he is a big year with Jaden Daniels. Kamani Vidal, could he be Kyren Williams this year? Maybe. We know the Chargers want to run the football a lot. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins is coming off another gruesome injury. Gus Edwards is not a great running back, so Vidal could break out towards the second half of the year. Couple more names. Ray Davis for the Bills, who I really like running back, and then Jermaine Burton for Cincinnati. That's all I have for you guys today. Let me know what pick you want me to do next. Comment down below and let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know what I could have done differently. If there's a pick you agreed with or disagreed with, I'd love to chat it over with you in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.